something is going on with my throat. Maybe a little water will fix it. We'll see. Three 941. Purtena tapasa yagyar. Purtena tapasa yagyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavim matam. Tat pritis tatvavim matam. Purtena tapasaya gyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavin matam. Putrena tapasaya gyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavim matam. Purtena tapasaya gyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavin matam. Purtena tapasaya gyar. Yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavin matam. Purtena tapasaya gyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavin matam. Ladies. Purtena tapasaya gyar. Dhanayar yoga samadhina. Radham nishreya sampumsam. Mat pritis tatvavin matam. Purtena, by traditional good work. Tapasa, by penances. Yagyai, by sacrifices. Dhanai, by charities. Yoga, by mysticism. Samadhina, by trance. Radham, success. Nishreyasam, ultimately beneficial. Pungsam, of the human being. Mat, of me. Pritihi, satisfaction. Tattvavit, expert transcendentalist. Matam, opinion. So the translation reads, it is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. So, responsively, it is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. So here's Prabhupada's purport. There are many traditionally pious activities in human society, such as altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, internationalism, charity, sacrifice, penance, and even meditation in trance. And all of them can be fully beneficial only when they lead to the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of any activity, social, political, religious, or philanthropic, is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. This secret of success is known to the devotee of the Lord as exemplified by Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. As a good, non-violent man, Arjuna did not want to fight with his kinsman, but when he understood that Krishna wanted the fight and had arranged it at Kurukshetra, he gave up his own satisfaction and fought for the satisfaction of the Lord. That is the right decision for all intelligent men. Only one's only concern should be to satisfy the Lord by one's activities. If the Lord is satisfied by an action, whatever it may be, then it is successful. Otherwise, it's simply a waste of time. That is the standard of all sacrifices, penances, austerities, mystic trance, and other good and pious work. Purtena tapasa yagyair dhanair yoga samadhina radhamni shreya sankung sang mat pritis tatvavin matam. It is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. If someone is dreaming, and they're dreaming that they're being attacked by a tiger, what's the best way to save them? Wake them up. Okay, good. So, if someone's dreaming and they're being attacked by a tiger, the best way to save them is to wake them up. So, the Supreme Lord is the source of everything. And sometimes it's an interesting game we can play to think, take any random thing that we can think about and imagine, how does this thing connect to the Supreme Lord? Where does it come out? At some point, no matter what you're talking about, whatever that thing is, whether it's conceptual, it's physical, it's in the past, it's in the future, it's theoretical, whatever it is, it all winds up connecting to the Supreme Lord. And it's a good exercise to kind of trace everything back to the Supreme Lord. Sometimes we're looking at something, we see something on the street, or somebody says something, or there's something on a video or whatever it is. If we can think, where does this thing somehow wind its way over, around, and through, and under, and back to the Supreme? Because everything ultimately does wind up back again at the Supreme. So, there are many things we can do for people. We can, as Prabhupada puts it here, we can give people charity. If they have not enough to eat, we can give them prasadam. We can give people medical attention. If they have some medical problem, we can help them with some kind of medical attention, or pay for it, or arrange for it, or whatever the idea might be. If somebody needs a place to stay, we can give them a place to stay. If they need clothing, we can give them clothing. If somebody needs a good word, or some kind of enthusiasm, then we could say something to them to give them enthusiasm. But what's the best thing that we can do for everyone? What's the best thing? Yes. Okay, right. Give them knowledge. What kind of knowledge in particular? Transcendental knowledge, okay. To give them transcendental knowledge. So, this is, actually I looked yesterday and I discovered that I had a misconception, but maybe it's not a misconception. There is a term, para upakara, and generally I was under the impression that it meant the highest welfare work. Actually it means to work for others. So maybe it also means the highest welfare work, but I couldn't find that particular definition. But out of all the kinds of welfare that a person can engage in, the best is to give people transcendental knowledge. And why should that be? We're giving them knowledge, we're just saying something. How does that help people? Anyone want to say something? Yes.
Why not? They don't know Krishna. If they know Krishna, they know themselves. And when they know themselves, they can understand their relationship with Krishna and re-establish that relationship.
Right. So in other words, you've solved all their problems in one stroke. They may be hungry, they may have bad karma, they may have a physical ailment, they may be, in want of some kind or another, they may be mentally disturbed. But if you connect them to Krishna, you have solved all their problems in one stroke. It may not be right away. They may take some time before the effect is ultimately reached, that all their problems, disappear. But essentially, you have solved all their problems. People are suffering because they are disconnected from Krishna. They're suffering because they're identifying with the body. They're suffering because they're experiencing the ill effects of their past misdeeds. So you are stopping that conveyor belt. When you give people knowledge, that stops the conveyor belt of their past karma, which is dumping yet one more load of unwanted pain and suffering into their lives because of what they're doing that they don't know. So in the world, there are people who are certainly suffering because of lack of food. There are people who are suffering because there is a drought or a flood. There are people who are suffering because there is a war. There are people who are suffering because they're sick. All these kinds of suffering are nothing more than the matured fruit of their past misdeeds. And by hearing transcendental knowledge, they are coming away from that entire trap. So you can feed somebody, you can clothe somebody, you can do these things, and sometimes these things are necessary. But the best thing you can do is to give them knowledge. And this verse is kind of putting that into sharp focus, that the Supreme is actually the source of everything and the reason for which we do everything. So we have Atam Pumbir Dvijashreshtas Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Sanushtitasya Dharmasya Samsidhir Haritoshanam. I think the verse goes. That the best thing one can do in their execution of their varnashram duties is to samsidhir haritoshanam. So what does samsidhir haritoshanam mean?
Give pleasure to Hari.
Right. To give pleasure to the Supreme Lord. So if one pleases the Supreme Lord, nothing is left unachieved. If one fails to please the Supreme Lord, nothing has been accomplished. So it's really as simple as that. Although it does require sometimes some introspection. We can think about how is what I'm doing actually pleasing the Supreme. I thought that was a really wonderful class that our Hari Vilas gave yesterday about impossible desires. I thought that was a really good key. That if someone's performing devotional service, all their desires will be fulfilled. And as Hari Vilas said yesterday, that if one has material desires, those may or may not be fulfilled, but as you continue with devotional service, your material desires will empty out, and you'll eventually have only one desire, really, to please the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord wants that, you want that. There's no reason for it not to happen. So your desires will all be fulfilled. Of course, along the way, Krishna may in some degree, some measure, to some extent, fulfill your material ambitions and desires as well. Because we start off not in a perfected stage of doing devotional service, but we start off with some admixture, which we usually call karma mishra bhakti, or it could be yoga mishra bhakti, or it could be jnana mishra bhakti, or admixture of all three. But unalloyed devotional service is gradually shed of all its adulterations, its non-essential items. We get rid of all the karmic aspect, we get rid of the yogic aspect, we get rid of the jnanic aspect, and then we're left with just pure unalloyed devotion. And so, in this way, the Supreme Lord is actually at the center of everything. And there's a nice verse, also in second chapter, first canto, Vasudeva Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramaka, Vasudeva Parakriya, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Paramtapa, Vasudeva Paramgyana, Vasudeva Parodamo, Vasudeva Paragati. So this was, it's a verse in the second chapter of the first canto. Vasudeva Paraveda. So Vasudeva is the goal of the Vedas. Vasudeva Paramaka. Vasudeva is the bestower of all material benedictions, Vasudeva Parayoga. Vasudeva is the one who gives yogic powers or yogic perfections. Vasudeva Parakriya. Vasudeva is the goal of all kriyas or all activities. Vasudeva Param Jnana. He is the source he's the source and the goal of all knowledge. Vasudeva Param Tapa. He's the purpose of all austerities. Vasudeva Paro Dharmo. He is the actual purpose of all religious activities. And Vasudeva Paragati. He is the gati, the highest goal of everything. So there we have it, that Vasudeva is the kind of the target of all these things. So we're learning again that by pleasing the Supreme, there is nothing left to achieve. And if we don't please the Supreme, we haven't accomplished anything. There is another verse which was always kind of a mysterious sounding verse to me when I heard Prabhupada quote it in some of his lecture tapes, Aradito yadi hari tapasas tatat kim, naradito yadi hari tapasas tatat kim, then anta bahir yadi hari tapasas tatat kim, and nanta bahir yadi hari tapasas tatat kim. It sounds like you're saying the same thing over again, over and over again. Tapasas tatat kim. So the verse is saying that if you are performing austerities and you're not trying to please the Supreme Personality, what's the use of those austerities? And similarly, if you have not pleased the Supreme Lord, no austerity is going to help you. And similarly, if you know that the Supreme Lord is at the center in the depth of your heart, then you don't need any austerities. And on the other side of the coin, if you don't know the Supreme Lord is the center of everything, then no austerity is going to help you. So it's another one of those kind of things that pleasing the Supreme Lord, some sit here, Hari Toshana, is actually the center of all activities. We are trying to please the Supreme Lord. And He's a person. And, we are following a lot of regulations and rules and rituals and do's and don'ts, and we are getting orders from others to carry out this and carry out that. But I was just thinking about it. I was having a conversation with Matuna, a couple of days ago about the idea that we have to meditate on the idea that, after all, we are trying to do things in a way that pleases the Supreme. And we kind of have the formulas. We know when Mangal Artik is. We know what song we're going to sing. We're not kind of scratching our head to figure, what song do I sing this morning? We already know the formulas are there. But at the same time, I think each one of us has got some way of meditating on, how am I exactly pleasing the Supreme Lord by this activity? How could I maybe do it more? How could I stay more connected mentally? Because that's the rough part of devotional service, Anybody can do some devotional service and drift away. And that's generally what we do. We do, at least I do. We do some devotional service and then we drift away. But actually, engaging in devotional service is, ohaitikia pratiyata, that we are doing it without motivation and without interruption. So we're learning how to take each moment, each second, and offer it to Krishna, which is so contrary to our conditioning for life after life after life, for so many lifetimes. We have cultured a attitude of rejecting the Supreme, of putting our material druthers in the front, you know. If I could have my druthers, I'd rather have my druthers than do any work all day. There was a song like that from Dog Patch. It was a cartoon in America called Little Abner, and you know, it was about some kind of Appalachian group of people that were living, and his druthers was that he could have his druthers. I'd rather not do any work, you know. So we really think about what we want. And so it's second nature. It's not our true nature, but it's second nature. The Christians mistakenly think that this is our actual nature, but actually it's not. Man's nature is not by its very essence sinful. The sinful aspect of human nature is there because of long culture of the wrong association, because we associated with material concepts, with the false ego. We identify with the body. We want material happiness because of all of those things. Then man's nature becomes sinful, because to enjoy in the material world, we are tempted to cross over the line, to take more than we should have, to do more than we should rightfully be allowed to do. We want to get things that belong to others. We want to be glorified over others. We want to be put in the center. We want so many things. And so the more we want those things, the more we find that we are crossing over the line into sinful action. And then as we cross the line into sinful action, Maya is standing by. And Dharmaraj and all the demigods are taking note. We are stepping over the line. And so somewhere after stepping over the line, we will be punished. We will have a blowback from what we've done incorrectly. So people know what they want. People know, in most cases even, how to get what they want. But they don't know what's coming next. They don't know the cycle of reincarnation. They don't know the cycle of karma. That what their desires are going to just engage them in future misery. And then when people get older in life, it kind of dawns on them, I think, as an unhappy realization as you get older, that all the things that you thought would be so good later in life, they never really happened. And many things that you certainly never wanted did happen, you know. So the nature of life is that you wind up fighting against material nature, which is nothing more than the ill effects of your past bad behavior coming back to you as bad karma. So, as Shakespeare said, to take up against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, you know, to fight against that. And we see that the more one tries to enjoy, the more slings and arrows of outrageous fortune we find are happening. And as Bhagavatam says, that when we desire to enjoy, at that point our misery is already starting. You know, it's already beginning. And the way to get rid of misery is to stop trying to enjoy, take what comes, and to try to please the Supreme Lord. If you do that, then things get evened out rapidly. We don't have so much difficulty at all, because now, we are performing devotional service. We're trying to please the Supreme Lord. And we are not measuring how happy am I this 15 minutes. We divide our lives down into little chunks of 15 minutes. And this 15 minutes, how happy am I? Oh, I'm a 6. And, 15 minutes later, I've dropped down to a 4, And then, for another 2 minutes, we're up into a 9. Wow, things are very nice. And then something really terrible happens, and we're dropped down into a 1 or a 2, in happiness. And then we're watching this meter rise and fall. And because we have such we place such importance on whether things are lining up the way we want them to line up. The material universe is very complex. And the more defined, the more elaborated our idea is of how we will enjoy in the material universe, the more likely that it will never happen. Because the more details we have on how exactly we want to enjoy, the less likely that it will ever happen. Because we need it to be like this, and it happens at this time, at this place, with these people, and it should last for this long. And so the more stipulations we have for what will make us happy, the more likely we'll be frustrated. Whereas if one makes no plan for happiness, happiness just kind of happens anyway, especially if you're a devotee and you don't require, big ticket things to make you happy. You're kind of, you get some nice prasadam at festival, you're talking with the devotees. You get some satisfaction from doing Sankirtan, as we've been talking about, that if one is giving Krishna consciousness to others, then Krishna is certainly satisfied. Never will be there one more dear to me than he who explains his science to my devotee. This is what we find in Bhagavad Gita. And so by giving Krishna to others, we feel satisfied, they are benefited, we are benefited, and we feel happy. And it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require a special place. If somebody's dreaming that there's an earthquake and they're being crushed under a house, what's the best way to save them? Wake them up, right. If someone is dreaming that they're falling off the top of a cliff and they're going to be killed, what's the best way to save them? Wake them up. So there's a theme here, It doesn't matter what people are dreaming. It doesn't matter what their particular dream is. What matters is that they get woken up. If you're being chased by a tiger or you're falling off a cliff or there's an earthquake, the details of what are happening are of no importance at all. All that needs to be done is you need to be awakened. When you wake up, then you realize there is no tiger. You're not falling off a cliff. You're not, in the middle of an earthquake. All these things are just dreams. It's just a dream. And in many ways, that's the way our world is, the way our life is. We are in the middle of a 80-year, 90-year, 100-year dream. At night we have one dream, and at the day we have another dream. One time I had a dream that I was walking up the stairs here in this hallway. And as I was walking up the stairs, I was very, very tired. And I thought, wow, I have to take rest. And then something strange happened. I realized I was already asleep. That I was dreaming that I needed to take rest. And I thought, this is really weird. You know, I'd never had a dream like that before, where I dreamed that I needed to go to sleep. I've had dreams about being hungry. I've had dreams about other things, but this was kind of bizarre, you know. And you would think, well, I'm already asleep, so I should be coming out of that difficulty of feeling tired. But at any rate, it was one of those weird things. So the world of dreams usually is over after 15 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. We have a dream session, and we usually dream one dream after another. And the daydream, as Prabhupada said, is 80 years. The night dream is 15 minutes or an hour. Both are dreams, you know. And one day, at death, we will also wake up from this dream, or at least the bigger 80-year dream, and we'll realize we never were this body, that we never owned anything that the body was connected with, that we didn't achieve any kind of fame or reputation, because now it's all being taken away. So we get back to, you know, some sit here, Hare Toshanam, just try to please the Supreme Personality, whatever we do. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet, you know, some way or another always think of Krishna. And, you know, smartavya satatam vishnor vismartavya najatu chit sarva vidi nisedyasya etayo eva kinkara. That always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. All the rules and regulations are based on that. And as we're hearing today, it's the opinion of expert transcendentalists, the ultimate goal of performing all good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. Some sit here, Hare Toshanam, or as it says here, mat priti tatvavit matam. So, for our verse today, to invoke the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. All right, so I'll leave some time for questions, comments, or discussion. Anyone have something they would like to add? Oh, we got to get the microphone out. I believe it's on.
I find this comparison very interesting. We sleep, we dream, we wake up. But that is the subtle dream, the dream of the subtle body. But then the dream of the gross body starts with birth and ends with death. And everything between is a dream. Because it's temporary.
Because it's what?
It's temporary.
Temporary, right.
Everything is, Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, what's valuable, it's eternal.
Yeah.
It's temporary. So it's a dream, and waking up from this dream means becoming Krishna conscious. That's an interesting meditation, because many of us suffer, right? We are suffering because we are identifying with the dream, and that's the problem. That was my small comment.
Yes, we want this body, and we want the happiness of the material world. But the happiness of the material world, that's, I think, the most sort of perverse thing about the material world, that it looks like to get happiness, you have to go out and get that happiness, But actually, that never works, Even though it seems so straightforward, it seems so logical, it never works. Whereas if you don't go out and try to fish for happiness, but you engage in service of the Supreme Lord, you're just happy in general, and happiness comes to you. As Prabhupada said many times in the Vedic, in his purports, that just as miseries come unbeckoned, similarly happiness also comes without any external endeavor, At least the kind of happiness that makes sense, the kind of happiness that actually satisfies us. Of course, most people, they have this very specific idea of what happiness is. And as I was saying earlier, that the more specific your idea is of happiness, the less likely it'll occur. Because too many, angles have to line up. Too many, situations have to be in perfect accord for that happiness to actually work. Whereas if your idea of happiness is much more general, then, you can be happy in a lot of situations. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, lecture. So it's my question is also about this last statement that this is a dream.
About what?
This last statement that this is a dream. We want to wake up from this dream. But then I'm thinking about there is some methods which some yogis have come up with, like lucid dreaming, and like something.
Uh-huh.
In our night sleep, we are actually sleeping. Some of us don't really are conscious of it and stuff like that. But when we're awake, that is also the dream. So why not be do like the service, austerities, and everything like that, in a way that we're dreaming about making ourselves more fixed up in service.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy to hear that I can use my awake state in a dream to serve. My mind going.
Yeah. So as we were hearing this a second ago, that the thing about the material world is that everything is temporary. That in Bhagavad Gita it says that the wise have concluded that of the existent there is no cessation, and of the non-existent there is no endurance. This seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. So everything in the material world is temporary. In other words, there's this element of destructive time. So time brings every situation, good or bad, to a conclusion at some point. That it may go on for some time, but whatever it is, good or bad, then it at some point changes to something else. And this is what causes both to suffer, to fear, and to also feel a sense of yearning or lamentation, because we wish things were the way that we remembered them to be. We hope that something stays the way it is right now, but we know in the back of our mind that it won't stay that way, because the material world is constantly mutating, it's constantly changing. And whatever the situation is, it will be different in the future. And so Krishna Consciousness means we stop really calculating all those things. After a while, we don't really think about that. All we think about is, well, what's my service? What am I doing now? How can I best perform this activity? And if we perform it well, then we're happy. If we don't perform it so well, then we think, well, next time I'll do it better. And so that's our meditation, And while all that's going on, we don't find ourselves in any kind of misery. Plus, we feel satisfaction in the deepest part of our heart from doing something that is eternal. Our connection with the Supreme Lord is eternal. Our connection with this body is not eternal. Our connection with this temple, with our body, with our particular service, with our mind, all these things will change at some point in the future. But but our service to the Supreme Lord, now that we've understood the importance of it, all that will happen is we will become more skillful and more focused in that service. That's how our future will unravel that. Instead of identifying with some aspect of our material conception of who we are, that will ultimately be shocked away from us at the time of our death, we will instead focus on service. And whatever body we're in, whatever situation we're in, come good times or bad times, we'll still feel a sense of connection and permanence, because that's actually who we are. But it's quite plain that the material world is constantly giving and taking away. It's constantly generating and at the same time destroying. So nothing is permanent, and the more we can focus on the Supreme Lord, the less that will matter to us. So this is our idea for today. And so those people who give Krishna consciousness to others, those people are the best charity workers. As we hear in the Gopis' prayer, Tava katamrita tapta jivanam kavibir iditam kalmasapaham shravana mangalam srimad atatam, what is it? Something grinantiye burida janaha, tava katamritam tapta jivana kavibir uditam kalma sapaham shravana mangalam srimad atatam. What's the? What is it? Yeah, buri. What is it? Yeah, so that's the song of the gopis, that those who Tava Katamrita, who speak about the Supreme Lord, they're the best givers of charity, because this is what will put out the fire of material life. So the fire of material life is all about imagining that we're the body and identifying with the temporary. But when we hear the actual understanding of spiritual life, then we get lost in the pastimes of Krishna, and that goes on in this body, in the future body, when we're finished with all of our material bodies and we're back home, back to Godhead, in all those kind of situations. Okay, so any other final questions or comments? Oh, you have something? Okay, so thank you all very much. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna.